Hey guys, welcome back to Honey in the Rock. I'm Sophie and this is Melea.
Hey guys.
Um, so we're camp best friends basically, and we're
Yeah.
gonna be real life friends too after camp's over.
Yes.
And also, my voice sounds so strange,
Real.
and you guys don't know what her real voice sounds like. If you listen before, you know what my real voice sounds like, but you don't know what her real voice sounds like. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Truly.
But we are week what session 5 now
Mhm.
of camp. It has been so hard and so sweet, and the Lord has just been redeeming so many things
Mhm.
in my life, and it's been really sweet to see that played out, and just being in community, and um, it's just really cool,
Yeah.
and it's like a gift of what the Lord has given us. So that's been fun. That's where our voices have gone. Um, but tell us a little about yourself. Where are you from? What school
Um,
do you go to?
my name's Melea. I'm from Georgia. I'm west of Atlanta. I go to the University of Georgia though.
Go dogs.
Go Dogs. And I have two siblings, mom and dad. I have a dog who I love dearly.
Aww.
His name's Murphy. He's the sweetest.
Do you miss your dog?
I do. I
Yeah,
need him to come see us.
good.
But yeah.
Sweet. The first thing I noticed about Malia was her fairy hair, and then she was like, "You can have some if you want," and I was like, "For real?" I just remember that. Like that was the first conversation I remember having with you, and then like I remember saying something about it every time I saw you, and I also couldn't remember how to say your name correctly
Real. That's okay.
because there was just so many names, and I just couldn't figure it out.
Mhm.
But I think I got it down now, and I called a girl in my group your name all week long.
Wait, stop. That's so
And
sweet.
because her name also started with an M, and I'm like Malia, and I'm like, I know your name's not Malia, but like, just answer
Sorry.
to it. Okay, dive into your testimony, and I'll just barge in.
Do it. Yeah. So I grew up in church. My parents did a great job of just having us when the doors were open. We were there. Our preschool ministry at my church did an incredible job of just like these are the foundational truths of the gospel,
That's
and
good.
these are what you need to know. And so, like when I was 6, I was saved and I was baptized. And when I was in middle school, I really wrestled with like how genuine could that have been? You were
Right.
6 years old, and
Right.
like as I grew with the Lord, He gave me a peace in like you knew what you needed to know then.
Right.
And like, yes, you should know more now than you did when you were 6.
Right.
But he just gave me a peace in knowing like you knew I loved you and you knew that you loved me in return because
Right.
of the sacrifices that were made for you. And so that was just really cool to also be able to pour that into other people.
Yeah.
And so then going through like the rest of elementary school and middle school, still at church all the time, still considered a good kid, still doing what I was supposed to do, mostly just growing in like a knowledge of biblical truths, not
Yeah.
necessarily growing in a personal relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
My sophomore year, at the very beginning of it, I was really praying for like an accountability partner and just like, this is a good prayer, Lord. Why are you not giving it to me?
Right.
And so then I kind of just faded away from that, didn't really think about it anymore. And then this was also the time that I met Dylan, my boyfriend now. And so going into our sophomore year, we didn't know each other. And so then around like October, we became friends, still didn't like one another. And we were up at 3 a.m. on the phone.
Right.
God knows why. Who knows?
Right.
Because I used to get my phone taken at night.
Yeah.
And so then my dad was like, "You're never dating him. This is
Right.
ridiculous.
Right.
Not happening." And so then I was like, whatever. I
Right.
don't like him.
Yeah.
Long story short,
We're
about
just
2 weeks
friends.
later, I liked him.
Yeah.
So then kind of just we did our own thing behind my parents' back and not neither of us following the Lord in that, neither of us trying to be obedient to my parents in that or respecting their decision. And so he also had not been saved at this time, which wasn't necessarily something that I was aware of because I knew he had gone to church some
Right.
and like not a bunch,
Right.
but um so then we just kept getting in troubles, kept not obeying my parents in that.
Right.
And so then at the end of sophomore year, struggling with that, also struggling with like when I was a kid, I was always the one that would pray growing up. Like we'd be in a group setting and be like, "Oh, Malia wants to pray." I'd be
Right.
like, "Dang right I do."
Yeah. Like.
And so like that was something the Lord had allowed me to be good at. And then the devil loves taking things we're good at and being like, "Okay, I don't want you to have that anymore."
Right.
And so like he really got in my head of like, you just know the right things to say. You know what's going to sound good and what
Right.
it's going to make people think you know what you're talking about when you don't.
Right.
And so I was really like, what am I even praying to anymore?
Mhm.
Like, genuinely,
Yeah.
first time struggling with my relationship with the Lord. And I was like, where am I? What am I doing?
Right.
Am I even praying to something that
Right.
exists?
Yeah.
And so that was like a foundational point of my testimony. And
Mhm.
so, like, that was also, I really hated vulnerability at this time, which is still
Right.
not my favorite thing.
Right.
But I just wouldn't do it. I hadn't
Mhm.
cried for like a year at this
Right.
point, just because
Because
I
you didn't
didn't
need
want
to.
to,
Yeah.
didn't think that it was necessary. And so I just pushed
Mm.
emotions to the side, pushed away feelings, didn't want to deal with them. And so
Right.
I just wanted everyone to think I knew what I was doing and
Yeah.
had it all together. And
Right.
so then that was everything on my plate going into church camp this summer.
Mm.
At the end of the school year, it was the last I had seen Dylan, and I was like, okay, this needs to be done. We need to move
Right.
past this because it's ridiculous, and you
Right.
need to probably obey your parents now.
Right.
Enough, just a thought. And so
Maybe.
then he's blocked in my phone at this point, by my parents, and
Mm.
his friend calls me like 2 weeks before Fuge camps, and
What grade were you going into?
we're going into 11th grade at this
Okay.
point. Just finished sophomore year. That was on my heart,
Yep.
going through that. And then going into 11th grade, his friend calls me and he's like, hey, so we didn't get a spot at our church camp this summer, and y'all had 2 more for Fuge. And so we're going to Union it this year.
Yeah.
6-hour bus ride. I'm sitting there like, okay, well, about to see if I'm actually over it or not.
Right.
Because at this point, I had convinced
Mhm.
myself I was. I
Right.
was like, I'm over
I
him.
don't even
This
like
is
'em.
ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
Moving on. Well, that didn't happen.
Right.
So 6-hour bus ride, just kind of catching up on the summer because he was blocking my phone, hadn't talked
Right.
to him. And so that was just everything on my heart. I really thought I was over it. And just like through conversations with like one of the leaders in our church that had gotten the opportunity to get to know Dylan, and just also getting to talk to him and just seeing where he was, I was like, okay, well, guess I ain't over it. That went
Right.
well.
Right.
That was also the summer I had one of the most incredible staffer I've ever had,
Mm.
and it impacted me so heavily. And
Yeah.
like that's the reason I wanted to work camp.
Yeah.
And so I sat down with her and I told her like my whole testimony. I told her the 3 things I was struggling with, just of like praying for an accountability partner and feeling like, oh, that's a good thing. Why was it not answered?
Right.
Secondly, like the not feeling like I was praying to anything, of just like
Right.
I've prayed for the same thing for so long. I know
Right.
what I'm saying, and
Right.
it's just there.
Yep.
And then also, this was the first time I was vulnerable with someone,
Mm.
and like genuinely vulnerable with someone, probably ever,
Right.
because I didn't want to do it.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that was just something that was huge. I laid it all, put it on the table. I was like, okay, here's
Here
where I
it
am.
is. Yeah.
Have at it. And so
Right.
we just got the opportunity to talk to that
Mm.
through that, which was incredible. And then that was also this summer. Dylan had never been to Fuge camps. He had
Okay.
been to other Christian camps,
Right.
but something him and our friend talked about was like, this is the most like we've seen the Lord in camp. Like other
Mm.
camps, it's like the Lord's on the side and it's camp.
Right.
Whereas Fuge is so focused on the Lord and
Right.
pushing for that,
Right.
and everything else falls secondary to that. And
Right.
everything else is a result of pursuing the Lord,
Right.
which is
Right.
incredible, and
Yeah.
a reason I love this ministry so
Right.
much.
And then being on this side of it too is like so evident. Like
Mm-hmm.
we pray over everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, it's not just like
Everything's intentional.
here's a game or here's
Yeah.
here's a this. It's like
Uh-huh.
really is like, how can we pray for this?
Mm-hmm. Every single thing has a purpose, which
Mhm.
is so incredible.
Yeah.
And like the intentionality behind it is huge.
Yeah.
And so after I had shared with her my testimony, it was like hang time before worship. And then going to worship, it was something else I had struggled with, was like I also felt like my worship wasn't genuine. And I was like, oh, I know how to worship in a way that it looks like I'm genuinely worshiping.
Right.
And so I was so in my head over that, and I was so like not actually honoring the Lord with my
Right.
worship. And
Right.
so that night, after going and being vulnerable with her,
Mm.
was the first time I had felt like I was genuinely worshiping the Lord,
Gosh.
and genuinely had put myself at his feet, and I
Right.
had taken the burdens that I had brought upon myself and put them at his feet and
Yeah.
allowed them to be there.
Yeah.
And so something I remember saying at church group time, this is another reason I adore church group
Mhm.
time so much,
Yeah.
is like I wasn't able to work through what I was struggling with the Lord and allow him to move in that until I was able to be vulnerable with someone, and until I was
Right.
able to bring it into the light.
Right.
Because that's me keeping it to myself is not getting anywhere.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I was willing to share it with
Mhm.
someone and willing to bring it
Right.
to someone's attention that the Lord
Mhm.
was able to work in that and use it in a way that grew me with
Right.
Him.
Right.
And so, yeah,
Well, and like it's almost a pride thing. Like our
1000%.
pride of being like, I want to look like I have it all together. I want
Mhm.
to pray where they're like, man, Sophie really loves the Lord. And I want to worship
Mhm.
where if they look over, like, oh gosh, yeah, she
Yeah.
worships. And it's like, well, that's a pride thing of
Mhm.
what am I trying to prove? Who am I trying to like get glory from? But then also, like, the Lord can use anything. Like, He could have
Absolutely.
used you with your mouth shut, but He also knows the whole plan and He sees the bigger picture. And He knew that you needed to be vulnerable with somebody else to experience Him
Mhm.
in a greater way. Like, He could have done it with just you and Him,
Right.
but He chose to do it with somebody else.
Right.
And like, how sweet that is of Him. And then, like, even now, like a couple years later, being like, that's why you're now working
Mhm.
and getting to love on other students
Mhm.
because the Lord let your story be that way. And so I think that's cool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that was perfect. So like that was my heart coming out of camp. This
Mhm.
was also the summer. There was a girl in our youth group that I was friends with, but not necessarily very close.
Yeah.
But we were in Bible study that week together,
Okay.
and we had committed that week to being each other's accountability partners. And something we had gotten the opportunity to talk about later that week was like she had also been praying for an accountable
Yeah.
friend at the beginning of sophomore year, and both of us were like, "Oh, guess that prayer's not
Right.
getting answered."
Right.
And like something we were able to talk through and the Lord revealed to us so kindly because it's not like we deserve to know.
Right.
But neither one of us were in a position to
Mhm.
be each other's accountability partner
Right.
when we were praying for it.
Right.
And if we would have gotten what we asked for from the Lord then, it would have been a
Mhm.
complete waste. And we
Right.
would have not used it to glorify His name. We
Mhm.
would have not used it to further His kingdom.
Right.
We simply would have used it as another friendship and
Right.
not
Right.
built one another up through it. And so,
Mhm.
how kind is it of the Lord to not answer our
Right.
prayers when it doesn't need to be
Right.
answered?
Yeah.
And so, that was something that waiting season and just like circling back
Mhm.
to everything with Dylan, we committed at the end of that week. We were like, okay, well, our feelings are still here, but we need to do something better about it. And so,
Mhm.
that week, we committed we were going to honor my parents and we were going to wait until they were okay with it. And that was hard.
Right. Right.
Talking about it now, it's so weird that people don't know it because, like, in high school, everybody we were around had walked through it with us, and everybody we were around, like, knew the entire story because
Right.
they lived
You
through
were
it with
there.
us.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, now, I'm just like, oh yeah, my boyfriend Dylan.
Right.
Whereas,
Right.
like, people have no idea what happened. And I'm
Right.
just like, oh, that's
Right.
weird.
There's a lot of waiting.
So then, junior year, still waiting.
Mm.
This is the year we go home and I started a Bible study at my house. And so this was one of my favorite things ever.
Yeah.
And so we had two college leaders leading it at this point, which was just how the Lord had aligned it to happen, which was incredible. And so it's at my house every Thursday night. My dad would make dinner at 7 and then we'd do Bible study at 8 until like 9:30 or something. And like my heart behind it coming off of camp was like, yes, youth group's incredible, but how many people are there that don't actually want to be there?
Right.
And so like going into high school Bible study, the really like intention of it was I want people to be able to see the other people that they're walking with that want to intentionally pursue the Lord.
Right. That's so beautiful.
And it was incredible.
I
I
love
loved
that.
it. And like God used it in such a way that I never could have imagined.
Right. Right.
And so we had those two college leaders leading it throughout the first half of the semester. So like the fall semester of our junior year. This was also like the only time I would see Dylan outside of school just
Yeah.
because we weren't allowed to be together at this point.
Right.
Which we were doing our very best to respect my parents in that. We weren't I mean, we were definitely still had those emotions for each other, but we acknowledged that those didn't need to be our main value at that point.
Right. Right.
And so this was also absolutely huge for both of our walks with the Lord.
Right.
Because I knew the Lord before this, but this is when I genuinely grew in a personal, intimate relationship with Him.
Right.
And that's also when Dylan did. And
Right.
he did not have the same upbringing that I did. So his parents are not in church, his parents are not pushing those values for him. And so this stage of our lives was absolutely crucial for both of our walks with the Lord.
Right.
And so then after after the fall semester of our junior year, going into the spring, one of the college Bible study leaders wasn't doing it anymore, so we just had one. And so that was still good. He still did an incredible job with it.
Right.
And that was also the beginning of 2023 is when I started the reading through the whole Bible in a year plan,
Yeah.
which ended up being like a year and a half.
Right.
But that's besides the point.
That's all right.
But that high school Bible study and reading through the entire Bible in a year were such a huge impact on my walk with the Lord. Like
Right.
those changed absolutely everything for me.
Gosh.
And like the way he used those as a tool to grow me and to stretch me
Right.
it's so enjoyable to look back on
Right.
and to talk
Right.
about.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's incredible.
God. Yeah.
Thank you.
Look at you go.
Yeah. So going through that plan was huge for me just because like I had spent time in my word before, but never like a structured, like this is where you are today.
Right.
And like plans like that hold you
Mhm.
so accountable
Yeah, me too.
because you need that.
Right. Right.
And so still struggling in the spring of like we're still not allowed to date. And I'm
Right.
at this point I'm like, okay, what more do you want from us? Like we're waiting, we're trying our best to
Right.
do what is honoring to you.
Right.
And at this point it's just frustrating. But we had both grown with the Lord and it's like, okay, if you want us together right now, we would be together. And
Right.
so just learning like how to rest in the Lord and like
Mhm.
waiting seasons are huge to me from like
Right.
the friendship things and from this
Yeah.
because like that's where we grew and
Right.
like you grow in a waiting season like
Right.
no other.
Right.
And so that was incredible and just like moving
Mm.
towards the Lord
Yeah.
together, but not in a sense that we had only had each other.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Even in church day, like we talked about patience, like this fruit of the spirit of patience, and it's not passive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like
Mhm.
I'm being patient on the Lord and I'm just sitting
Waiting.
here. It's like I'm being patient while growing.
Yeah,
And I think that's really
exactly.
interesting. Like so often I looked at waiting seasons as like punishment or just like horrible things and just sit there and like twiddle my thumb.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, if you're gonna wait at the doctor's office for an hour, bring a book.
Yeah.
Instead of stare at the wall.
Yeah.
And it's like same thing in that. Like,
Girl.
okay, I'm not supposed to be in this relationship right now. The Lord wanted that, He would. So I'm gonna wait. But as I'm waiting, I'm gonna seek the kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely. So like our growth in that was huge. And it was either January or February. He committed his life to the Lord and he was saved
Incredible.
and baptized. And like how silly of me to think that that didn't need to happen before we got together.
Right, right,
How
Right.
had I convinced myself we were equally
Yeah.
yoked?
right,
We were not.
right.
And so we both got to continue growing our relationship with the Lord. At the end of junior summer, I had a conversation with my parents, and my dad was like, okay, obviously neither one of us have changed our opinion. It's been,
Right.
what, a year and a half at this point. And so after a full year of waiting on my parents, my dad was like, hey, I'm going to take down some walls and y'all can start going on dates this summer. But we're going to see if that means I need to put up more or take some down because
Right.
obviously neither of our opinions have changed.
Right.
And so one night at youth group, Dylan had asked my dad, he was like, hey, can I take Melea to junior prom?
Yeah.
And he was like, okay.
Sure, yeah.
So he did. And that was great. And that was essentially kind of our first date.
Yeah.
But also,
Okay, fun.
yeah, it was great. So we went the entirety of the last day of sophomore year all the way until the last day of junior year was the first time we had kissed again. And that's just funny to me. And people have no idea. Like,
Right.
people don't know this
Right.
about us. And I'm
Right.
just like, oh,
It makes
crazy.
it sweeter too.
It was so sweet.
Yeah.
And so then senior year, or the summer before senior year, just still pursuing our relationships with the Lord and just like seeing how we grew in that. And then we, the other college Bible study leader that we had now stepped into a different position in ministry.
Yeah.
And so then it was me who was leading Bible study.
Sweet.
And I had always, the Lord had blessed me in being able to excel in leadership positions. And so this was just a place that I stepped into. And I did have to take on the role of like teaching instead of sitting there and listening, which was huge for my walk with Him.
Yeah.
And like just pushed me to grow in ways that I wouldn't have if it wasn't in that position.
Right.
And so just continued growing with Him, continued pursuing Him, and like pouring out a lot.
Right.
And like being poured into, yes, but mostly pouring out because most of the people I was around were people that I was trying to build up. It wasn't
Right.
necessarily equally yoked friendships
Right.
of like them also being
Mhm.
at the same stage of their
Right.
life,
Right.
which like some people don't get. Of like equally yoked means you should be in the same position. Like even if
Right.
you're both believers, you're not always equally yoked. And like you need to be in the same area of your walk with the Lord to
Right.
be equally yoked.
Right. Because even like we're pursuing the same Lord, but it's like even like the donkey or the horse, what
Mm-hmm.
animal is it? It's like if
Any of them.
one is chasing the Lord
Mm-hmm.
faster
You're
than this
spinning.
one, you're still not going.
You're going in circles.
And
And
so
so, yeah.
yeah, that is interesting because it's like, okay, well, we're both pursuing the Lord, but we might not be pursuing the Lord at the same speed. And you're
Mhm.
not always going to be pursuing the Lord at the same speed with everyone you've ever known. And
Right.
that doesn't mean you push them away.
Right.
But
right.
like to be aware of
You need people
at some
pursuing the
points we
Lord
need
together.
also,
Mhm.
yes. Are we chasing after him at the same speed?
And so that is like the biggest thing that I gained in college. Of like senior year was incredible.
Yeah.
Me and Dylan were allowed to date. Almost essentially all the restrictions that had been put in place were gone.
Right.
And just like still growing with the Lord, going through the reading plan, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And so then, so then I went to Georgia in the fall of last year.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But I was fully intending on like church hopping and like finding a church that worked for me. And the first Sunday I went to my sister's church and I was in love with it. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go anywhere else because I didn't want to miss anything there.
Right.
And just like what is still like the biggest thing for me there is like the way the church pursues the Lord
Right.
and the way the Holy Spirit is so evident
Right.
in that church.
Right.
I didn't want to try and find anywhere else
Right.
because I felt peace in being there.
Yeah.
And so they have family groups, which was a huge part of my year of just like getting to be poured into for the first time. And they were very similar to high school Bible study, but taken to a level of like everybody was pursuing the Lord genuinely and intimately.
Yeah.
And so that was incredible.
Yeah.
And like something I said at the end of the year when we were talking about like the best things about family group is like most of the time when you're in groups like that, you have people there that want to be poured into and you have people there that want to pour into people.
Right.
But what I noticed and the Lord allowed me to see is like genuinely almost everybody there wanted to do both.
Right.
And they wanted to pour out and they wanted to be poured into.
Yeah.
Which changed everything.
Yeah.
And just allowed me to grow in a way that was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the one trying to get everybody on the same page.
Right.
The Lord's working in their hearts and in their own way that we can walk towards the Lord together.
Gosh, that's so good. I literally had a conversation with that girl this week, and she's in high school, and she was saying like it didn't feel like it was her own faith. Her dad's a pastor, her family's a bunch of believers, and she's like, it feels like it's my sister's faith or my dad's faith. And what I encouraged her to do was like, who can you mentor? Who can you pour? You're being poured into so much. Who can you pour into now? And literally like an hour later, she ran up to me and found me and was like, I just found a 6th grade girl in my youth group.
Oh
And
my
she
gosh.
said she's going to meet with me now. I got her phone number. And
that's incredible.
It was just like, the Lord works in us, and it's so kind of him letting people pour into us, but then we also need to pour out, but you can't just do one of them. And I just think it's like, this is also your faith as you're pouring it out, because all of a sudden it's not just because of your older sister doing it or whatever. So that's cool.
Yeah. It was huge.
Yeah.
And so like the other ways the Lord's been like working in my heart the last year is like in October, my mom's dad had passed away. And then we had also been dealing stuff with my other grandparents at that point. And at one point they were moved into our house and then they were moved back into assisted living all over the place. And then in January, my dad's dad passed away. And like my initial response is like, okay, it's fine. Let me push it away. Let me not deal with it. And then after a week or so, I was so convicted over it. And the Lord was like, yes, this hurts, but why don't you just bring it to my feet? And why don't you allow me to work in it in a way that I want to grow you? And like, you're so fast to push these emotions away that you're missing what I could be doing in them. And it's just like, oh,
that's so
good.
Melea. That's so good. Yeah, because we want to be strong and we want to have it all together. And if we push it away, we feel like it just doesn't matter. But then it's like, just bring it to his feet. just sit there with him in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, as believers, he gives us peace in that. Like,
Mhm.
that's a really sweet thing he gives us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah.
Because even here, like, the things I feel like I've struggled with, it's like, well, heck, I'm not telling anybody that.
Let me act like it's
because
fine.
we're all believers and I want them to think I'm a great Christian. It's
Yep.
like, it's not, you're not
Mhm.
a good Christian. It's,
Mhm.
you're trying to carry this on your own. And we're not
Mhm.
carried to call things on our own. And that's, like, actually so sweet that the Lord taught you that. And
Mhm.
even in, like, these waiting seasons of your life of, like, waiting on relationships, waiting on friendships, like, all of these things, like, waiting, it's like, okay, well, this is what to do in waiting.
Mhm.
Bring this to my feet. And then
Yeah.
now it's like, well, maybe you're not in a waiting season right now, but you're still not called to carry it alone.
Yeah.
So bring it back to my feet.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. And so then the other thing the Lord was really teaching me in like January, February,
Yeah.
I had restarted the Bible in a year plan.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord's call in the Old Testament for rest is so daggum evident.
Right.
And it is so apparent.
Right.
And it was something I was so not
Right.
doing because I wanted my schedule filled to the brim. I
Right.
wanted to be somewhere
Yeah.
at all times. And that's just, I do not enjoy resting. It's not something that I am very good at by
Right.
nature.
Right.
And so, like, the Lord had really, like, convicted me over, you need to rest
Right.
and you need to learn how to sit and be okay with sitting.
Right.
Because sitting still just makes me anxious.
Yeah.
I hate it. Like, I
Right.
don't want to not be doing anything because
Right.
I feel like I should be doing something.
Right.
And so, like, that's something I still need to be working on with the
Right.
Lord of
Yeah.
just like, you need to rest. He has made his call to that so evident. And
Right.
he has made it so apparent that that is something he
Right.
wants and he designed us.
Yeah.
He knows what he's
To
doing.
do. Right.
And so that was just like really laid on my heart.
Yeah.
And so now, because of how much of an impact family group had on my life, I get the opportunity to lead one next year
That's so
with
perfect.
the guy that was my family group leader last year,
So
which I'm
good.
so
Yeah.
daggum excited
Yeah.
about.
That's gonna be so sweet.
Yeah.
And now the Lord literally he redeems so many things of being
Mhm.
like, okay, this healed parts of you now. Here it is again in
Yeah.
another way. Even like I feel like at camp, like things I've walked through, I get to have conversations with other people about
Mhm.
them, like younger girls or boys, and then it's like the Lord is redeeming this. Like I didn't
Mhm.
walk through that for no reason. You didn't
Mhm.
have to walk through waiting on Dylan for no reason. You didn't have to walk through like different things for no reason. Like God put you through that
Yeah.
and allowed that to be something and a part of your story to grow you closer to Him.
Mhm.
And then we get to now like point that back to Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
I know you're waiting on this. Look at who Jesus is. Like, His timing is perfect.
Yeah.
And His timing really is so perfect. We just can't see it.
Yeah.
And that's something I wrestle with a lot of being like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. It's like, well, if we had a God that we could fully comprehend and
It
understand and
wouldn't
all
be
this
a
thing,
God
He's
worth
not God.
following. Mhm.
Why would we want to follow a God that we can read
Yeah.
completely, understand Him fully?
Yeah.
He's just a human then.
Mhm.
And so He's fully God and fully man, and it's just like a gift. So that's really sweet. Thanks for sharing.
Hey, thanks for letting
Thanks
me
for being my
share.
friend.
Thanks for being my friend.
It's a joy. We like got this. We're about to finish, I promise. We like when we first got to know each other. I immediately was like the presence of the Spirit was so clear in her life, and it was like very like inviting in. And I think it's now sweet to then watch you like love on your students and serve in this way, because it's like, oh my gosh, like I needed a Melea in my life to pour into me when I was the grades that we are getting to love on. And I think it's just sweet how the Lord like aligned us together to know each other and get to know each other this summer, then be friends forever.
Mhm.
Truth. And just like His grace and His kindness in that. And I don't know, it's just so cool because it was like met you and I was like, the Spirit is in her, like drawn to you. And then even like 3 days in, I feel like I could just be like myself and honest. And I think that's just a really sweet thing, and something that the Lord gifts you with. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, I literally, after meeting you, I told Dylan, I was like, she has so incredibly learned how to walk with the Lord. And like the wisdom that He has indwelt within her and allowed her to have is such a blessing to anyone she encounters. And it's like, I never want to not be friends with her now. Ever.
It's just the nicest thing ever. And then I got to meet Dylan.
Joy.
Sweet. Well, thank y'all for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah,
You're the best.
you're the best.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.